Given the title of this video, I'm sure I've already pissed some people off. Just by the sheer accusation of a popular Mr. O maybe not improving or perhaps getting slightly worse, I'm sure fans are already up in arms. But before I begin this video, I do want to preface, I'm a massive Hadi Choopan fan. In fact, I had him winning the Olympia in 2019 and 2021 at least, just because I loved his physique so much and I thought it was worthy of the Sandow those years. But going back through the years, while you may expect Hadi Choopan has improved just because he wasn't winning the Olympia then, but he is now, I don't think there is a cut and dry yes in terms of answering the question, is Hadi Choopan improving? For example, just take a look at the front relax pose from 2019, his first Olympia version, versus his 2022 Olympia version, which is his latest version. And just by looking at these two photos, I'm sure you can understand why I want to do this comparison. But I won't just be comparing 2019 versus 2022. I think we might as well compare every single Mr. Olympia version of Hadi Choopan, all four of them, so we can get a much better and more clear picture of how he's changed, where he may have gotten better, and where he may even be regressing. I'll also rank all these physiques just like a normal bodybuilding show. So if I think a particular year is in first place for a pose, I'm going to give them 1 point, and then 2 points for second place, 3 points for third place, and then of course, fourth place will get 4 points, and then at the end, when I total up all the scores, the lowest score will be the winner. Now, if Hadi Choopan really is improving, we should probably see a decrease in scores from 2019 to 2022, because a decrease in scores is a good thing, and that means he has gotten better. Let's find out by getting into this video, and let's ask two questions. One, is Hadi Choopan improving? And two, since we have all his Olympia versions right here, what is Hadi Choopan's best physique? Starting, of course, with the front double biceps. Right from the get-go, this is a 2019 pose, not a 2022 pose. 2019 is cutting the best outline by far, while 2022 may have a slightly smaller waist, and I do say very, very slightly. 2019 has much bigger legs, so that version still has a better X-frame despite maybe having a slightly bigger waist. The 2019 version is also more hard and dry top to bottom, but actually has more fullness and provides a little bit more pop throughout the arms, which obviously helps in the front double biceps pose. So this is easily 2019's pose, but 2022 is the closest to that, so I'm going to have that version in second. I'm going to put the 2021 version in third. He was very good here, very dry, and had a lot of detail, but he just doesn't have that oomph throughout the lats or the quads, both of which are vital for creating a good silhouette. The vacuum though really pulls in his waist, which makes his waist the smallest here, and that makes up for his less full quads. And then finally in fourth, I'm going to put 2020. Really, it's not even a bad pose. Truthfully, I could probably switch this and 2021, but I just like 2021 slightly more. But that's really no fault of 2020. Like I said, this is a perfectly fine pose. He has most of the same qualities from 2021. I just slightly prefer 2021. For the front lat spread, I think these are all pretty close, especially 2020 all the way to 2022. I do have 2019 slightly ahead of those three versions. He's just bigger all around here. The legs are bigger here, and that helps with the X-frame and creating the outline that we look for in this pose. Everything is just about the same between all of the versions in the upper body, including the lats, but I guess the chest does look the thickest in 2019. So I will have 2019 in first place, but moving on to the other three versions, this literally for me comes down to personal preference. And I do have something planned for the last two, but for the second place, I'm going to give the ever so slightest edge to 2021. I really do prefer the look of the more separated quads, and the vacuum makes his whole outline appear more exaggerated, so I guess it can have my second place. But for the other two, I'm going to do something that I've never done in one of these comparisons, but I've never compared the same person 4 times before, so it's whatever to me. I'm actually going to do a tie. I don't want to get too much shit in the comments. After all, we are comparing the same person 4 times. And spoiler alert, this is the only pose I'm going to do this for, so I do feel a little bit better about doing it here. So for scoring, I'm going to give the remaining two versions 3 points and just move on. 2019 to me was the clear winner, and I liked 2021 the best after that, but those other two, it's really just up in the air. Going into the side chest, I thought this was going to be a 2022 win due to that version just being the biggest up top, so I thought that amount of size and thickness would just overwhelm the other versions. But actually, I'm not going with the 2022 version as my winner, nor am I using 2019 as my winner. I'm actually going with 2021. I like how he's hitting it here and in 2022. With the twist and the squatting down, it literally makes him look as thick as possible. He basically looks like a upside down triangle. He's downplaying his legs a little bit with squatting, but that makes his up top, his upper body look so much bigger. And with the twist he's rocking too, he's literally getting the max amount of thickness he can display. And that's what I thought I was going to see out of 2022. I do still see plenty of that same thickness, but in 2021, I see a lot more pop and detail combined with that thickness. There's a little bit more separation in the arms and shoulders, which makes them pop a little bit more. The obliques come through a lot better. There's more vascularity running throughout the entirety of the physique, and of course, more striations throughout the chest. And against 2019, the 2021 version has the thickness on it, but not the detail. So for my money, 2021 is a nice mix of 2019 and 2022. And then for 2019, I'm actually going to give the slight edge to that 2019 version. Because like I said, 2022 is showcasing plenty of thickness, but to be fair, so is 2019, and 2022 doesn't have near the amount of detail that 2019 does. It's not even close. So while 2021 had the thickness and the detail, 2022 doesn't have that detail to handle the 2019 version. But I will put the 2021 version in a close third because in my opinion, it drops off pretty significantly to 2020. Again, not a bad version, it's just clearly the weakest. All the other versions draw your attention before 2020. It doesn't have that standout pop or thickness, nor the detail that the other versions do. Simply, it's just the most mediocre out of all these versions.
Mediocre?
For the first of the two back poses, my eyes are immediately drawn to 2021 surprisingly. 2021 looks drier than 2020 and 2022, but is also a tad wider than 2019. But 2019 does just about everything else better. Bigger arms, bigger shoulders, bigger hams and glutes, and they're sharper as well. And the back in 2019 isn't really that far behind 2021, so this pose is a little tough. But since the back is just about equal and 2019 is bigger everywhere else, I'm going to give the edge to 2019. But of course, I'll put 2021 in a close second. But for my back two placings, I have a clear fourth and by extension, an easy third. So 2020 has by far the weakest back. I'd actually give the lower body to 2020 over 2022, but the back is nowhere near 22's, and that is saying something because the 2022 version is fairly washed out and lacks detail. But the back on 2020 is completely shallow and doesn't have the width of any of these versions. So 2022 is off the hook and gets an easy third place since 2020 doesn't have the back at all for this pose. The back lat spread is an easy slam dunk for 2019. He's wider here than every version except 2022, but 2022 has nowhere near the level of detail, conditioning, and dryness from the back. More width is nice, and that's usually what we weight here in the back lat spread. However, 2019 still has a lot of width and all the other details and the thickness that the 2022 version doesn't. Also, the lower body of 2019 is still decimating 2022 and every single other version. Also, the lower body of 2019 is still decimating every other version. It's really no contest, but I am putting 2022 in second place because the remaining two versions are a bit more narrow than 2022. Then I'm going to put 2021 in third. Then I have the 2021 version in third. This version compared to 2020 is wider and a tad harder, so it's going to be hard to beat even from that, but 2021 also is doing a lot better through the glutes and hams. They're a bit more conditioned. So while 2021 and 2020 are closer than 2019 and 2022, I just think that 2021 does everything a little bit better than 2020, so I'm going to have 2020 in fourth. Unfortunately, we are going to have to skip the side try today. I couldn't find HD photos for 3 of the versions, so I decided I was just going to scrap the pose altogether. I did consider using this shot that Hadi Choopan does. Mark's Max Muscle calls this the hoo-ha shot, but it's closer to the side chest pose than it is a side try, so really it would just be a repeat of that pose for scoring, so we'll just go ahead and go to the last 2 poses. For the abs and thighs, I'm going to be starting at the bottom for this one. So in fourth place, I have 2020. In a shot that really showcases and rewards detail, 2020 doesn't have the ab detail of the other versions. The waist in this version is the second thickest here too. 2019 is thicker, but the quad sweeps and the deeper abs help balance that out. Yet again, 2020 is going to be labeled as the most mediocre of the bunch. And in third, surprisingly, I have the 2019 version. And this is mainly because of the thicker waist I hit on earlier. Yes, Hadi's quad sweeps as a whole are the best here, but surprisingly they don't have as much detail versus any of the other versions. Even the 2022 version seems to have more detail throughout the legs. Going back to 2019's midsection, it is the thickest, but this version escapes the bottom position due to having some pretty deep ab cuts and oblique detail, both of which 2020 didn't have. Then in the runner-up spot, in a close decision, I have 2022. I just prefer the conditioning in this shot. The 2021 version is clearly more separated through the quads, but really through the midsection there's not a whole lot of difference, and I think mainly it's the lighting that makes the abs look better in 2021. So by a hair, I'm going to put that 2021 version in first, but I definitely wouldn't fault you for putting 2022 first. They're pretty close. There's slightly more quad sweep, but less detail in 22. However, the abs are basically identical between those two versions. So depending on what you weight more in a physique, I tend to always weight conditioning a bit more. That can be what splits the tie here for you, and really a lot of other poses. But for now, that's the order I'm keeping. And to round out the comparison, in the most muscular, we have another decisive win for Hadi's 2019 version. This is the most muscular pose, and if you couldn't tell by the end of this comparison, that's obviously 2019. I think the other three versions are pretty similar, but you can just tell 2019 is a bit above those other three versions. He's a lot fuller there and is straight up bigger. And I think in terms of detail, 2019 is probably coming in at second, only slightly edged out by 2021 because that version is the driest of the bunch. So 2019 has the mass and plenty of detail, so that's a clear win for the final pose. Now for the last three versions, like I said, they are all very similar. Out of the remaining three, 2020 actually catches my eye. Here, Hadi looks the biggest, which is the most important for this pose. 2021 is a bit drier and maybe has a slight more amount of detail, but size is king for this pose, and 2020 is the second most detailed out of the last three versions, so I'm putting this version in second. Finally, this may be a little contentious, but I'm actually going to put 2022 in last. 2021's conditioning and superior separation make Hadi look bigger, even though I'm pretty sure 2022 has several pounds on the 21 version. I think with more separation, the delts and arms appear to be more round and big. Now the legs, however, are interesting, definitely a lot fuller in 2022, but that version is getting blown out of the water in terms of detail by the 2021 version. Looking back and forth between the lower bodies of the two versions, I don't think there's enough size difference to ignore the lack of detail from 2022. And truth be told, I just like the 2021 legs more. Now I did say size is king, and 2022 is probably bigger on paper, like I said, but the conditioning is carrying 2021 to a third place finish because it makes Hadi appear bigger here, and that's going to leave 2022 in fourth place. And really those were all just nitpicks. Besides the front lat spread, this was probably the closest pose of any of them. I did feel that 2019 was leading the way on this, but as I said earlier, those last three versions are basically identical. And really at that point, things like posing and lighting start to matter a lot more than the individual differences in the physique. So take this one and really the entire comparison with a huge grain of salt, because after all, we're literally comparing the same person 4 times, not to mention an athlete who has been the most consistent bodybuilder since Phil Heath. As I was finishing up this comparison, I truthfully didn't know what the scores were going to be after 2019. I felt that that version did win the most poses, but I felt that I was all over the place with the other versions, as most of them came down to splitting hairs. Here are the final scores. 2019 did in fact get first with 10 points, then in second was 2021 with 15 points, in third with 19 points was 2022, which was his Olympia win by the way, and then 2020 got fourth with a distant score of 25 points. I asked 2 questions at the beginning of this video. One of them was, what version of Hadi is the best? And for that question, I believe we got a pretty clear answer. 2019 was easily Hadi Choopan's best Olympia physique. By the way, 2019 Vancouver may in fact be better than that, so hit the like button if you want to see a comparison between the 2019 Olympia version and the 2019 Vancouver version. But I did have 2019 winning all but 2 poses, and that version did get a single last place. I think 2019 being the best version out of the 4 is a pretty easy consensus. The second question I asked was, is Hadi improving? And at the beginning of this comparison, I was at least going to say kind of. 2019 was great, but the next year, 2020, was dead last. If you're not familiar with Hadi's drama in 2020, he literally got to the States all the way from Iran the night before the Olympia. He literally had less than 24 hours, and this was the package he was able to bring, which I definitely think needs to be commended. Because even though it was the last in this comparison, that physique, after all the pandemic drama and then showing up 24 hours out, he was still able to get 4th in the world. This explains the sudden decline in scores and then the subsequent rebound in 2021, because you can only go up from being at your lowest. But 2021 actually edged out 2022. This is going to ruffle some feathers in the comments, but I think I can explain why this happened. To start, the scores were already really close. A 4-point difference in a comparison like this is not that much, and consider how much nitpicking I did for the poses. And 2022 was bigger than every version except 2019. However, like I said earlier in this comparison, I tend to lean on the side of rewarding conditioning a bit more. And 2022 was definitely not the most conditioned. This isn't wrong of me. Some judges prefer more size, some prefer more shape, Some are like me and prefer conditioning. This is why there's 7 to 9 judges at larger shows, and even then they cut out the high and low scores so that way they can get a lot of different opinions. I think this is what I got out of the entire comparison. Hadi Choopan exploded onto the scene in 2019 and in my opinion had that contest in the bag, but that's another video for another day. But then he took quite a hit in 2020, like most people and just things in general. And he did improve in 2021, he had more size and was way better conditioned. And then finally in 2022 he did improve, but really only in terms of size. But really that's most of the battle in bodybuilding. We know he can come in with crazy conditioning and with a super polished look, but now that he is setting the standard and not Big Ramy, I think he will return with that more polished version. So is Hadi improving? After looking at this comparison, I'm going to have to say yes. While his most recent version wasn't his best, he had to rebuild after 2020 and has been doing a pretty good job doing that. That's going to do it for this video, guys. I'm sure you guys have plenty of thoughts about this entire comparison, what you think Hadi's best version is, is he really improving, etc, etc. Leave your comments down in the comment section. If you guys are looking for any high quality, great tasting supplements, take a look at risesupps.com and use code DHudson5510 at checkout for 10% off. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys for watching.